Donald Trump is an absolute wreck of a human.
Left-wing district attorneys and left-wing judges are
Crime's
letting criminals out on $1 bonds, and they go out and murder.
You're not at all alarmed that the last administration ended with people storming the Capitol?
Piers Morgan had on Tim Miller and eye-patch-wearing Dan Crenshaw. They talked Trump and Kamala policies. Let's watch the highlights together and then talk about it. If you like this type of content, please like and subscribe to help my channel grow. Thank you.
For all the drama and all of the twists and turns, so far the American people remain split, and this race is unbelievably close. Well, joining me for a head-to-head debate on the big issues that will decide this election, from economy to the border in the Middle East, the Texan Republican congressman and former Navy SEAL Dan Crenshaw, and the host of the Bulwark podcast, Tim Miller. Well, welcome to both of you. Dan, let me start with you. What do you make of Kamala Harris, the candidate?
Well, if you were in her position, you would also give word salads, because you don't want to actually contend with the fact that the last 4 years are indeed your positions. And it's even worse than that, because let's not forget, she ran to the left of Joe Biden. So her positions are generally far more progressive and far more crazy than Joe Biden's even are. She did want to ban fracking. She did want Medicare for all. She wanted all of these things. But even if she has come to Jesus and changed her mind on all of that, we can rest assured that she is completely in favor, and she said this in an interview recently, that she wouldn't change anything from the Biden administration.
Although you will never catch Dan Crenshaw admitting it, Trump himself has changed his stance on dozens of issues over the years. For example, on abortion, same-sex marriage, immigration, trade policies, and healthcare.
Would it not have been better for the Democrats to have had an internal battle to choose their nominee, rather than just crown Kamala Harris and hope for the best?
Yeah, I mean, maybe, Piers. I was pushing for Joe Biden to get out of the race because of his age, not because of his policies long before that. And unfortunately, it came too late. And he ended up with, kind of at a moment where there really wasn't time to do that. And his vice president has stepped up.
In my opinion, it would have been better for Democrats to choose a different nominee. However, Miller is correct that there wasn't enough time. If Harris loses to Trump, Biden could take a lot of the blame for not dropping out sooner and allowing the Democratic process to choose another candidate.
As you pointed out, his vice president, Kamala Harris, crushed Donald Trump in that debate, absolutely annihilated her. So if her policies and if her rhetoric is that weak, and if she's low IQ, like Donald Trump said, it's unclear why he was unable to make a single coherent argument against her that was not word salad. And frankly, I also just disagree with the congressman when it comes to the policies. I mean, I think that the Biden administration has had some policies that are too liberal for me, but much of what they passed has been bipartisan, including the infrastructure bill, including the CHIPS Act. The economy is coming in for a soft landing. The American economy is the envy of the world. And I think Kamala Harris has put out a pretty detailed economic policy that's far superior to Donald Trump's. What Donald Trump has put forth for his economic policy is a 20% across the board tariff, which I know Dan Crenshaw cannot possibly support, and just a budget busting $5 trillion more added to our deficit. That's Donald Trump's policies. So I think when it comes to rhetoric, preparation, and policy, she's superior. And lastly, I would just point out that at this point, I would think that the congressman should be able to know how to pronounce her name correctly.
According to the statistics available to anyone with Google, Biden has signed more than 400 bipartisan bills into law, while Trump only signed around 30 bipartisan bills into law. Kamala does struggle answering questions directly. Anyone pretending Trump does not is telling a lie.
I mean, he's way out of touch with what everyone in America knows and believes. Under Donald Trump, you had one of the best economies we had in 50 years. The thing that got in the way of that was the Chinese virus that came over. Don't interrupt me.
We're talking
all right?
About. Are you for the 20% across the board?
What we had under Trump policies, stop interrupting me, all right? You're done here, all right? You're an emotional wreck. You're obsessed with Donald Trump. It's kind of sad to watch.
This is what deranged Trump sycophants do. He got emotional about being unable to openly support Trump's 20% across the board tariffs, and immediately went to personal attacks because he knows the tariffs would be a horrible idea.
Now, here's the thing. Under Donald Trump, you had 3.5% unemployment. You had one of the best economies we've had in decades. When Biden finally got control, our real GDP was back to pre-pandemic levels. They had inherited an economy that was well on its way to actually recovering. That's why they got all of the job growth that they did.
Dan is not making a good argument. Obama also left Trump a good economy. Obama was averaging 224,000 new jobs in his last 3 years, while Trump's first 3 years only averaged around 191,000 new jobs. During Obama's final 2 years, median household income increased by around $4,800, while during Trump's first 2 years, it only increased by about $1,400.
That's not what we're talking about. We're not in 2018 anymore. We're talking about Donald Trump's
I'm
plans in 2024.
I'm going back to policies and outcomes.
Congressman, we're talking about Donald Trump's plans in 2024, which is a 20% across the board tariff that he said recently he could do without Congress, and he plans to do without Congress. So if you want to try to lecture me and say, oh, what about economics and supply and demand,
then I'll lecture you on some
happen?
basic conservative principles.
Are you for a 20% tariff?
I'll lecture
That's
you on
his
some
policy.
basic conservative principles, since you claim to be a former conservative, so maybe you need some help remembering.
Yeah,
what that's
I'm for
like.
free markets and free trade, not a 20% tariff.
Once again, Crenshaw goes back to personally attacking Miller because he has no response to the actual argument. Very typical when you're dealing with these types of people.
There's nothing in conservative principles that says tariffs are necessarily a bad thing. Conservative principles are a way to approach problems and assess trade-offs. Now, if the government needs revenue, there's a variety of ways to get that revenue. Every single tax that there is, whether it's an income tax or a property tax or a consumption tax, has some sort of distortionary effect.
Conservative principles are a way to approach problems and assess trade-offs. What an idiotic thing to say. Thank you for pointing out that for every tax there's an effect. Nobody could have guessed that.
And she has single-handedly, throughout all of these exchanges, declined or doesn't know how we're going to get to utopia. Does that not concern you?
Yeah, no, because we're not getting to utopia. We need somebody to run and manage the government, okay, Piers? And so on this question of how she's going to pay for her plans, there isn't a good answer, so she didn't give one. I agree with that. I'm a fiscal conservative. I wish that they would be balancing the budget. But here's the thing. She's running against Donald Trump, whose answer to that question is even more incoherent. Despite Dan's attempt at a history lesson over there, what Donald Trump said was how he was going to pay for his plans was that he was going to tariff China, and we were going to use the tariff money as if it's like a government fee, like we're getting this fee, and that he's going to pay for free healthcare. He's going to pay for childcare. He's going to pay for everything with these magical tariffs. Like, he has no coherent answer on this. And here's the other thing: what is not good for the economy is instability.
It's undeniable that Trump is very unstable. He is more likely to agree with the last person in the room who gave him a compliment than he is to have a stable, consistent thought.
Donald Trump is an absolute wreck of a human. We have no idea what he would do in a second term. When he left office, there was a mob of people storming the Capitol trying to attack Congressman Crenshaw. That's what was happening. They were waving his flag. They were storming the Capitol. They were trying to keep him in power. I'm sorry. Just let me finish this. Let me finish this.
It's such a strange thing to say.
Let me finish this. No, I'm sorry. This is what happened at the end of his term. And even his own supporters were like, we are concerned that he can't stay in another 14 days. They talked about the 25th Amendment. Dan Crenshaw at the time said that he was on the side of the rioters, that the president was on the side of the rioters. That's what he said. And now, because of that, his own vice president, his own chief of staff, it's not me, it's not somebody that is obsessed with Trump, his own Department of Transportation, Secretary of Defense, all of these people can't support him again because they don't know what he's going to do, because he's so erratic, because he's of such low character.
But we have to go back to what you said. You have to go back to what you said about the economy and not knowing what he's going to do. That's nonsense. We know exactly what he's going to do because he led the country for 4 years.
You don't want to talk about it.
Well, I want to talk about what actually matters to people, and if you actually poll people and talk to regular people, what matters to them is the economy. What matters to them is immigration.
Why did you guys
for you
lose
to
the
say that we have no idea? We have no idea what Donald Trump's going to do in the next 4 years. Of course, we have an idea because he governed for 4 years, and you know what he did?
No, it's
a really
totally
good job with the
people,
economy. And I realize that you don't know that. But like 60-70% of Americans do know that.
Congressman,
and so for you to say we just have no idea, it's all going to be all over the place. That's nonsense. We know exactly what he's going to do.
It will. Congressman, the people that were that were running the government with him last time don't support him again. Most of his cabinet doesn't support him. He has a new vice president. In the box at the RNC convention. Okay, in the presidential nominees box, it wasn't Dan Crenshaw, it wasn't Pence. The people around him, it was Tucker Carlson.
Many of Trump's close supporters have voiced their issues with Trump. Several that stopped supporting him at one point or another but worked with him in the past include Mike Pence, Mark Esper, John Kelly, Mick Mulvaney, Bill Barr, James Mattis, Nikki Haley, H.R. McMaster, Chris Christie, Stephanie Grisham, and Betsy DeVos, among others.
Under a Harris administration, what would the major changes be, and what would stay the same?
Frankly, I love the American people, and I believe in our country. I love that it is our character and nature to be an ambitious people.
Please, for the love of God, Kamala, just answer the question. If she loses the election, it will be because she answers questions like this instead of in a straight and blunt way. What Kamala doesn't seem to understand is that people appreciate straightforward answers even if it's not exactly what they agree with.
She doesn't say at all how any of her policies would actually help small businesses. I talk to small business owners all the time. The one thing they need more than anything else is less regulation, easier to permit, less taxes. They need it to be easier to create a business. Republican policies do that. And you have to associate the policies with outcomes before you lay any blame or before you give any credit. She can't even articulate what she's even talking about. And nobody knows what her economic policy is based on these answers.
While being unable to articulate her answers for some reason, she has listed specific policy plans online which Dan Crenshaw is choosing to ignore. For example, increased tax deductions for small businesses and startups, generating 25 million new small business applications during her first term, streamlining the process by reducing bureaucratic hurdles, supporting community development, easing loan requirements, and focusing on existing businesses. If you want to see more, simply Google Kamala Harris policy plans.
All right, Tim, surely, Tim, you must recoil a bit when you see the way she responds to those kind of questions. I mean, she literally says nothing. It's just,
I don't.
It's just blather.
I don't, because this is the thing. You guys don't want to show Donald Trump's answers because they're even more word salad. It's lies and it's conspiracies and it's dangerous. And like, that's why we're not showing his interviews where he's lying about what's happening with Hurricane Helene right now, or the debate where Kamala mopped the floor with him. Here's the thing. Congressman Crenshaw wants your audience to think that the Republican Party right now is the same as it was in 2017, and that the Donald Trump administration will be the same as it was when he brought in a bunch of traditional Republicans to be around him in his cabinet and to work in his staff. And I'm sorry, that's just an imaginary world that the congressman wants to live in to feel comfortable. Because the world we live in now is all of those people are, no, I'm sorry, Piers, let me finish. All of those people are gone now. And at the RNC at the box, the people around Trump are Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Tucker Carlson. Tucker had a prominent spot to speak at the convention. Congressman Crenshaw did not. This new party is a nativist party that's going to be about mass deportations and tariffs and revenge on Donald Trump's enemies. If you don't believe me, listen to what Donald Trump says. And I just want to know why Congressman Crenshaw thinks that he understands where the party is better than Trump's own vice president, Mike Pence, who assesses this and says, no, this is not someone we can trust. Why does Congressman Crenshaw think that he knows better than Mike Pence about Donald Trump's character and what kind of policies?
Tim makes a great point. People want to act like Trump makes sense when he speaks, but the truth is he doesn't. He's far worse than Kamala. Furthermore, he's surrounding himself with crazy yes men who just lick his boots.
That's a damning non-answer.
Mass deportations, a vast majority, that's not a non-answer. I'm the only one actually giving facts
It is
here.
a non-answer. Why
the
do you know better than Mike Pence?
Mass deportation is broadly supported by the American people, including Hispanics.
Why shouldn't we listen to Donald Trump's vice
So ask the
president as
question
chief
a
of
different way
staff?
then, Tim.
Why shouldn't we
You
listen
ask
to Mike?
them. I'm not here to answer for them. I'm here to answer for me.
Doesn't it alarm you?
And I'm here to lay this out very simply.
You don't
very
feel
simply
at all
for the American
alarmed that
people and what the choices are.
Dan, you're not at all alarmed that the
only
last
thing that alarms
administration
me is
ended
your
with people
high-pitched,
storming the
shrieking
Capitol?
voice.
Good argument, Dan. Back to personal attacks because you don't have anything of actual substance but talking points that are easily debunked.
I was there. You know what happened after that? A few hours later, we did our jobs and we got back to business. You know what happened a few weeks later? Donald Trump moved out of the White House without a word. He didn't move out of the White House?
Well, no. It's not true because for starters, you didn't go back.
Am I confused or are you confused?
Who's shrieking now? For starters, you didn't go back to business. There were votes to overturn the election, and as you said, your colleague Ted Cruz of Texas voted on the side of the rioters. And then Donald Trump didn't go to the inauguration for the first time in history. He went home like a petulant child. I want to read something that Dan Crenshaw wrote. Here's Dan.
Okay, so you're mad that he didn't go to the inauguration. That's That's what it is?
He didn't. We didn't have a peaceful transfer of power. He didn't. In every other transition before this, the outgoing president, their team invites the incoming team in.
Okay, so
this is what we do in a normal democracy.
So let me just get this straight. Because he didn't sit there in January and watch President Biden get inaugurated.
Dan. Because
that's not a peaceful transition of power. That is such an absurd statement to make. But go ahead.
Okay, Dan.
I'm glad you're reading quotes from my book. I appreciate it. Go ahead.
Dan, fine. Then that's not the sitting there that I care about. How about when he sat there off the Oval Office for hours watching TV while a mob of people carrying his flag attacked police officers and stormed the Capitol? The President of the United States was not on the side of the Capitol Police. He sat there and watched his DVR, and he ate his well-done hamburgers and did nothing. He did nothing for the Capitol Police that stood there because he was rooting for them to lose. That is not a peaceful transfer of power. That is Donald Trump's behavior that is unacceptable.
Dan claims Donald Trump left the White House without a word a few hours later, which is just a complete lie. Trump still can't shut his mouth about it 4 years later. Dan can't stop interrupting Tim because when Tim speaks, he wins.
You're doing this performative thing where I'm a little bit upset about how Kamala's exaggerating on this or that. But like Donald Trump is making up just flat out lies. Inhuman lies about people that are in this country illegally and planning to deport them, saying he will deport like the Haitian migrants who have legal status here in this country. He went on a national TV stage and said that they were stealing pets from their neighbors and eating them. Like, this is so mean and so inhumane. How can you trust a person whose character is like this, who will lie, who will tell you that he won when he lost, who will tell you that people here legally are eating pet animals and stealing them, who will tell you that we're not helping people who are suffering from Hurricane Helene? Like, he is a bad person that lies and tells cruel and inhumane lies.
Let me go to Dan.
All the time. How do you defend that type of
the bad
person?
orange man argument? The
bad
orange man.
Yeah, Dan, he's bad. You know who said he was bad? You said that he was an insane idiot.
Let Dan answer.
Dozens of Republicans, including Dan Crenshaw, have said horrible yet truthful things about Trump, only to be supporting him now. For example, his own VP pick, Vance, said Trump was, quote, an idiot, America's Hitler, reprehensible, and a total fraud. These people are disgusting. They only support Trump because he has the power from normal working-class Republicans. If he didn't, they would continue calling him names and criticizing him.
But on the metrics, he wins on every single one.
That's not right, though.
Name one where he doesn't.
Right. The metrics only count for him if you stop the metrics before COVID happens, because COVID wasn't his fault. I actually agree with this. I don't blame Trump for COVID, but you can't say that all of the job loss that happened, the huge spike in crime that happened in 2020 while Trump was president, you cannot say that that was not his fault because of COVID. But then everything that happened in 2021 COVID had nothing to do with any of that. That's all Biden's policies. Look, we had this huge disruption that happened under Trump. And if you actually just look at the metrics,
of course I can.
You want to say metrics. If you look at just the metrics of crime and jobs, it's better under Biden. Sorry, that's just facts.
I agree with Tim that we can't blame Trump for a lot of what happened during COVID. However, it's the same thing with Biden. Bad things happened during the early part of Biden's administration due to COVID. Republicans love to blame Biden while giving Trump a complete pass.
Those are metrics.
That was debunked in the last debate that they had on this.
Let me switch
on the crime issue. And look, and you know this very well. Like, you know that across the country, crime is spiking because left-wing district attorneys and left-wing judges are letting criminals out on $1 bonds, and they go out and murder. Okay, what do you mean crime is going down?
What he means, Dan, is that crime is literally going down in the United States, specifically violent crime. There was a small spike during COVID, but then it's continued to decline dramatically since the 1990s.
From a military perspective, who do you think the members of the American Armed Forces would feel more comfortable about having at the helm, given these three, and of course the ongoing threat of China, given these big geopolitical issues that are raging right now?
I'm still in very close touch with my own friends, most of which are still active duty. These are people who are going to support Trump. They like the 4 years under Trump. We didn't make a lot of huge errors.
Trump's first authorized military raid killed at least 10 children under the age of 13. Trump and Pompeo released 5,000 Taliban members in return for 1,000 Afghan government prisoners, which turned out to be a horrible deal. The agreement also acknowledged the Taliban could attack Americans in Afghanistan if they didn't leave before a certain date. This is what led to a chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan within the Biden administration. Trump later blamed everyone for that but himself.
I think the people coming in on the national security front back into this administration are very much adults in the room. Mike Pompeo, Robert O'Brien. These are good people who truly understand the nature of the world.
Mike Pompeo, the same Mike Pompeo who spent tax funds on things like salon appointments and the costs associated with picking up a dog from its groomer. Robert O'Brien is a well-known yes man for Trump who does whatever the hell he's told to do. His only claim to a high-ranking government position was thanks to his loyalty, which is way above his actual competence.
What do you make of Elon Musk? He's all in, he says, now for Trump. Is that helpful to Trump, or is that going to whip up more anti-Trump sentiment as well at the same time?
I don't see what kind of anti-Trump sentiment it would whip up. I do think it's helpful. I think, look, I mean, Elon's a major figure in U.S. culture and politics. Some people love him, some people hate him. But I think a lot more people like him, and at the very least, they respect him. And they respect his judgment. I mean, this is a guy who's built multi-billion-dollar companies very successfully. He's extremely smart. And I think people view him as pretty objective as well. And so to see him pushing for Trump, which at first might seem outside of his more even-keeled personality, but he's doing it because of policies.
Dan is absolutely right. Elon Musk is supporting Trump because he knows Trump will give him favorable policies. Some of those policies include less taxes and less regulation, so he can follow less rules and possibly start doing some crazy stuff with his money that he wouldn't be able to do today. For example, imagine how easy it would be for Musk to mention a regulation that he wants removed to Trump and how quickly Trump would strike those regulations down.
The only thing that concerns me with Elon really is the recklessness with which he, like, for example, this past week was sharing false information about how the FAA was banning recovery planes and groups that wanted to come in and help with the recovery of Helene. He was spreading a bunch of false stuff about how the FEMA is blocking that, which is untrue, until the Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg, had to call him and give him the facts. Like that's a little alarming that he's engaging in that, but I do think he helps Trump.
Elon Musk is responsible for spreading dozens of false claims and lies without fact-checking. For example, fake bomb threats, immigrants eating pets, fake election map, importing voters, deepfake video, debate rigging, meme legality, and more.
Congressman has kept coming back to this. If you don't mind, I'd just like to say very briefly that he ended the last answer by saying that his argument is stronger because if you just look at the 4 years. And again, I do just need to remind us that kind of just acts as if 2020 didn't happen, because Donald Trump left the White House in 2020 with record unemployment, with crime skyrocketing, and with blood of police officers on our Capitol. That's how he left and went back to Mar-a-Lago. That's how he left. So I think if you just objectively look at those 4 years, I think you can see why his character flaws and his policy failures, really, but mostly why his character flaws led to bad outcomes. And I got cut off earlier, but Dan wrote this in his book. He wrote that a culture characterized by self-pity, indulgence, outrage, and resentment is a culture that falls apart. And I think that's true about a country and a party, that if you're led by someone that is full of self-pity, indulgence, outrage, and resentment, that describes Donald Trump better than anything I've ever heard, actually. I think that is going to lead to a country that falls apart. I think we saw that with the chaos surrounding the election and COVID as Trump left office, and I think that we would see a similar chaos again if we put him back in.
Thank you for watching. If you made it this far and like this type of content, please consider subscribing, liking, and sharing the video to help my channel grow. Thank you.